Welcome to Mountain Pottery Idyllwild. I'm Dr. T, aka Arthur Tobias. I'm the resident master potter here at Mountain Pottery Idyllwild. And today I'm doing, well, it comes under the label of grotesques, which is a large field. Some people call them ugly face jugs, crazy face jugs. I'm going with crazy face jugs today because, you know, it's just less pejorative, okay? So I'm going to start out by making the jug here on the potter's wheel. And I like to give tips and tricks for potters and also just information that suits everyone else, ages 4 to 400. So one of the tricks, I was here the other day and some young fellow was trying out the wheel for the first time, and I don't know if somebody showed him this or he'd seen it in a movie, but he was taking his 1 pound ball of clay and just slamming it onto the, and if you're a good aim, that's good. The problem is, can be, actions have reactions, so that clay might stick the way you want it to, right where you want it to, and it might just kind of react to that slam and not stick so well. So,
and it's hard to center it that way.
Yeah, exactly, unless you're a really good, but you know, I get it. If I was working in a production pottery where sometimes the wheels don't stop turning because they may all have a central power source, you know, you got to just get that ball of clay on there because the wheel keeps turning. So you want it to stick. So, but at the age of almost 76, I like a sure thing. So I'm going to smear some clay on the wheel head here just to make a nice sticking spot. And then I'm using 3 1/4 pounds, 3+ pounds. This is recycle from here at the pottery, which, given the color of it, it's probably a good majority of Laguna Clay's RSMC. It's a good red firing cone 5/6 clay. And so I like to just get my ball of clay. There's nothing more disappointing than to be kind of working away and all of a sudden the whole thing just kind of tilts up because it's not really well stuck. So play a little patty cake is what I used to tell my high school students. I'm working on a Lockerbie motorized kick wheel, which if you're looking to outfit a studio, this is probably the best single studio wheel you could get. Were made right down the hill by a guy named Lockerbie in Beaumont, California. It's very heavy and it's really clumsy to move because of its shape, but it combines the ability to kick in either direction and to use a motor. So I'm going to use the motor a little bit. It's kind of noisy. I'm not sure how the bearings are on it, but I'll turn it off for later. But I'm going to use the motor just to kind of center my clay. Okay, so I've centered my clay, sunk a hole in it approximately to where I think it needs to be. And now I'm going to open it up a bit and establish the bottom on the inside. And I like to do a little, and I know you can't see what I'm talking about in here, but I'd like to do a little reverse pressure to counter the tendency of the bottoms of things, especially if they're untrimmed, to develop a pressure crack or an S crack. If you think about the physics of it, the walls here are going to get a lot of compression. The bottom, not so much. There's that initial push and spreading out, but so what I do is actually kind of push clay back into the middle of the bottom on the inside and push that down just to give me a good. Now, as you will see in a little later here, I am going to trim this or the one like it using a bottle chuck. The old teacher in me wants to make a joke about it. Used to be called Charles, but I'm not going to do that because old teacher jokes, well, they're about as stale as other old things. All right, so kind of neck this in a bit. Oh, and I always forget to put on my glasses, but I know where they are. They're up here. That's why there's always some clay on them. Almost everything I own has some clay on it somewhere. I think the flywheel on these is about I don't know, maybe 125, 150 pounds, but the way it's constructed, almost all the weight is in the outer edge. Of course, that makes good sense from physics. And you cannot, to my knowledge, you cannot wear out one of these Lockerbie wheels. And no, I don't own stock in the company. I don't know if they still exist, but we had, I think, 18 of them or so in the studio where I taught at the Harvard Westlake School. And I know the oldest one, and this is before I retired in 2015, it was over 40 years old. So it's just keep some grease on the bearings and now sometimes I do get quiet. Thank goodness, you say. Because I'm concentrating. Yeah. Actually was having a discussion, I think with Zach here the other day, about using a minimum of water when you're throwing, especially if you want to throw large. You think about it, the more water you bring into this piece of clay, the softer it's going to get. And if you're trying to throw a 40-pound bottle or vase form, the last thing you need is for it to get softer while you're working on it. Now you might say, well, just start with a softer clay. But that's counterproductive. Oh no, start with a stiffer clay. I'm sorry, start with a stiffer clay. That's counterproductive. Because you're going to waste all your, or use all your energy trying to get that centered in the first place. And to pull it up. So starting with a stiffer clay is not a solution. But I got onto something called dry throwing. I think there was an article in Ceramics Monthly around 1973 by a guy named, I believe his name was James Fox, 1X or 2, I'm not sure. And it's called dry throwing. The idea being, and I'm not really exemplifying it here today, but once you've used water to center and open up the form, you don't go to the water bucket ever again. You use up all your available slip and just keep going. Now, the problem with throwing dry can be if your fingers are coming at a 90-degree angle to the body of the clay, the tendency to chatter is there. Well, you might have the shakes too, but who knows? It's a modified grip like that, if you can see. So the clay slips by like that, inside and outside. So I'm actually going to see if I can do that here. Not that this needs to be dry thrown, but... All right, so jugs. I'm doing Crazy Face jugs. Now they have a long history, as does clay and humanity. Probably the history of Crazy Face jugs is about as old as clay and humanity, because who can resist the temptation to stick a nose and some eyeballs and some funny teeth and ears on that jug shape? It's usually the size of a human head, maybe the shape of. And so I have read that the Greeks did some such kind of a crazy, face on jugs sort of thing. I know if you're looking at my sketchbook over there, there's the page I actually did for this demo last time I did it. And I know the lower left-hand corner of that right-hand page shows and I did it in watercolor, a Crazy Face jug that was done by probably an enslaved black potter either in Georgia or the South Carolina Edgefield district prior to the Civil War. I know the Edgefield district, it's where Dave, who sometimes is called the enslaved potter, but became Dave Drake upon gaining his freedom in the 1860s. It's where he worked and made some beautiful pots. Anyway, so there's traditions that come from Africa, from the Mediterranean. Also on that same page is a head of a bearded man, Bartmann, bearded man in German. And those were done as a small applique in a mold and pressed onto these bulbous, I think they were wine jugs that were made in Germany in the era of the first Queen Elizabeth. And they were a very popular export item. We have a lot of them that were discovered at Jamestown, the colony there, where they came in the Elizabethan era, filled with wine. And they have a few that are still whole and quite a few pieces of them. So quite a few of them made their way across the Atlantic in the early 1600s. Bartmann, also called Bellarmine with two L's, M-I-N-E. And I forgot to look up if that's somebody's name or why that is a name for the style. But anyway, so those, another version of a... And in terms of grotesques, I do have a sketch there from I forget which English Gothic cathedral, a very animated, crazy face. And I actually used that kind of as a model for one I did last year. Gargoyles, if you know your Latin, maybe you've forgotten. I've forgotten most of mine. Our word gargoyle comes from the Latin word gargula, which means throat, because that's what they were on the Gothic cathedrals. It was a throat where the water falling on the roof came through those throats and fell on the passerby. Gargula. and the Gothic craftsmen. Now, these weren't the characters walking down Sunset or Hollywood Boulevard with the spiky hair. Okay, we actually, when I taught art history for many years, referred to, and I got a bit of a wrinkle in this pot, so we'll see how far we get with it. We talked about Gothic humanism. It wasn't an era so much of doom and gloom as we might think, thinking of Gothic, especially Gothic horror, which was very popular in the early 1800s. And it was a colorful time. They had quite a sense of humor. Something you might not realize, they had lots of holidays because they followed the Christian calendar, and every week or two some saint or somebody had a holiday. So while their work days might be long, and maybe they did work on Saturday too, they had a lot of holidays interspersed in there. All right, getting this spout area down to size is exercising me a bit here today. See if I can do that, especially since I have a wiggle lower in the body. All right, I'm getting close. If you have any questions while I'm working, I'm thoroughly capable of answering them. If it looks like I'm praying over this, that's probably what I'm doing. So I know the old-time potters, especially in the southern tradition, they often were itinerant, the wheel formers. Somebody might have a pottery. They might have a kiln, wheel, and clay available, glazed materials, but they didn't have a potter, or at least not one capable of doing the range of shapes that a 19th century American country potter would be required to do. Churns, jugs, crocks, flue tiles for your chimney, okay? Anything that could be made from fired clay. So if an itinerant, I could be an itinerant in that case, would come around and spend, I don't know, a week or two forming on the wheel all the crocks and jugs and so on. And they were paid by the gallon. And they figured that a good potter could make 1 gallon from 4 pounds. Well, if you've tried making, this is like 3+, a gallon jug out of 4 pounds, that's some really good throwing. So you had to be good, but that's how they were paid. If you got a penny a gallon or whatever it was back in 1830, why, that's how it worked. I'm just taking my time with this because, hey, we're getting there. I sometimes do have a tendency to hold my breath with my mouth agape, so I'm trying to avoid that. I know one of the biggest problems my beginning students on the wheel had, they were holding their breath trying to center and form a piece of clay. And if you're holding your breath, your muscles are deprived of oxygen, and that's not good. So the ones that could whistle, I would ask them if they would just whistle to prove they were still breathing. Proof of life. And of course, that's a famous line, from Casablanca, right? You know how to whistle. Just put your lips together. Lauren Bacall and Humphrey Bogart. All right. On a good day, I'll get to this point and not have to trim off any extra. But I'm just a little off here. So I'm going to trim off some extra. You hate to do that if you're going for height. You just trimmed off some of your height. So, okay. So, of course, what you don't want to do is get up here to the spout area and have thinned it so much that you don't really have any clay to work with. So, if I can level this out a bit and pinch it in just a bit more, and I think we'll be ready about for phase 2 here. There we go. What else could I say about jugs? So what happened to the crazy face, ugly jug, grotesque jug industry after the 19th century was over? Well, the whole ceramic industry began to be impacted by, I don't know, plastic, aluminum, glass, you name it. The southern potters noticed all those northerners coming down in their touring cars in 1920 looking for authentic folk art. What better authentic folk art for your Manhattan apartment than a Crazy Face jug? So these became very popular as a tourist item, along with chenille bedspreads and braided leather bullwhips and I don't know what else. I'm remembering from our family trips to Florida back in the day. All right. And you have to be careful doing that. You can blow it out. But see, that gave me the shape I wanted. How about that? Clasp this in a little more. Hey, it's just clay. If you caught me licking my lips there. All right. All right, I'm going to quit fussing with that. Now, I do like to do a little trimming while it's still on the wheel with my modified wooden tool. The thing I like about that African-American pot that I've pictured in my sketchbook there is the roundness of it. It's really just kind of, well, that's a head shape, all right. I know somebody with a head shaped like that. Now, of course, the piece I made completed yesterday on the stand up here, I've taken Jughead. Remember Archie and Veronica and Jughead? Jughead to the next step, or maybe the illogical step. I've used the handles to represent his ears. All right, so that's pretty much it for this. And I'm going to give it a little more trim here. So I did this. I made one of these on Friday. Today is Sunday. That's it, the body. And let it dry for about 7 hours. And then I did what I'm going to do next here. Use a trimming chuck and trim it. And then yesterday, it was still slightly sticky, but stiff enough for me to manipulate. And it had to be stiff enough for me to also do the trimming on Friday. And I added the features. So for the white clay, I use Laguna's B-Mix 5. It gives me nice white teeth and white eyeballs. And then I'll have some color choices for when I glaze it. I want to try to continue the crazy theme with my color application and choices, but that comes later. All right, so, and normally in the shop I would now pass a wire under this, freeing it from the bat that it's on, in this case a plastic bat. Oh, I know what that is, but it didn't break. That's my stamp. Okay. I've forgotten where I stuck it. Anyway, I'm going to leave this attached to the plastic bat because this pot will be going with me back up to Pine Cove in a hard-sprung Jeep Wrangler. So, all right, so there's that. Yeah, I like that. Okay, grab another bat. Why are these called bats? You don't hit anything with them. I have some ideas, but I won't get into them. There we go. Okay, so this is a trimming chuck, and I'm going to center it on here. And I'll use a little clay just to keep it from moving around. Excuse me, but I do lick my clay. It's inorganic, most of it.
Kid, did you ever know that you didn't eat dirt?
Yeah. Eat more dirt. My wife could tell you that's my philosophy of maintaining a healthy immune system. Just eat more dirt. Eat more dirt. Okay, so I have a pot here that I threw yesterday in my studio. And same general shape. And this one's still a little sticky, but you don't want it to get too stiff for when you start adding parts to it. You may not get a good bond. I was having a conversation with Zach here today about handle joining, and when you stick parts, anything you need in terms of clay, anything you're sticking together, they should be as close to each other in moisture content as possible to get a good bond. And I generally work standing up at a kick wheel. So now, safety tip. I need to, it's always good to check the thickness. That's pretty thick. I can take a lot out. This flywheel is made to turn with just a breeze, okay? So probably every semester for 26 years that I taught beginners on the wheel like this, somebody would get onto it by stepping onto the flywheel. Whew, down they went, and it could hurt. There's a lot of steel here, so you never step on the flywheel. Just a safety tip. Also, always make sure your apron is tied in back. You know, I don't know about high school students now. I've been out of the game for a decade. But, 10, 15 years ago, They were running around with their pants sagging, boys and girls, and they didn't tie their shoelaces. Well, they didn't tie their apron strings either. So then an apron string would get wrapped around the head and down, and then their head was being sanded on the turning wheel head. And they're going, Dr. T, Dr. T. It's like, I warned you. So industrial safety in the pottery room. I'm just taking out some extra clay. I left a little extra here so I could make a nice foot rim. And also prevent those compression cracks. So yeah, back in the 1920s, you could return to wherever you came from to tour the Southland with your chenille bedspreads, your bullwhips, and your Crazy Face Jugs, or whatever else they were selling in the numerous roadside stands in the Carolinas and Georgia, northern Florida. Okay, close enough. All right. While I'm sitting here, I'll put my stamp in. And the stamp, my stamps always have the year date. So it's time to make a new one pretty soon. And there it is, 18. All right, so that's the use of a trimming chuck. There actually are several items you can make for your pottery from clay. You know, I have a big jar on my wheel where my slops go for recycling. Trimming chucks are handy, and other such things. So, and of course, the pioneer potter back in the day would need all of that. Okay, so there's that. And I don't step on the flywheel. All right. Okay. Another really handy piece of equipment. I've been doing portrait busts for many years, so I got this many years ago. I got tired of working on a couple of buckets stacked up. You want to have the head of the person you're doing, their head and the head you're making, just about level with your head. So I got this really nice, well-worn sculpture stand from Carter Sexton. It's used to be, I don't know, might still be there, old time art supply store in North Hollywood. And it's been my companion ever since. And so there we go. So first thing I like to do is fashion a nose. You need to establish the face somewhere. So I'm going to try to remember y'all there. See if I can work over my right shoulder a bit. Okay. And I need some slip. I'll put a little slip on there. I don't get too concerned about scoring, roughing up the surface. Oh, this is better. As I'm going to do enough pressing to get the clay to stick on there pretty well. So I'm going to do a nose to start with, just to kind of establish the proportions and placement of the features on the face. And let's see if I can rough out a nose here. Well, sometimes you might want to, it depends on whose head is in your head when you're doing this, okay? So male, female, slightly animal in aspect, fish-like, bird-like, I don't know. It's kind of up to you. Having studied human and animal anatomy, but really human anatomy a lot, I found that my face jugs have kind of gotten, I don't know, more fussed with over the years. So with the one I did yesterday and the one I'm doing today, I'm trying to get a little more of that, I don't know, I hate to call it primitive aspect, but what those buyers from New York City were looking for in the Carolinas and Georgia 100 years ago. Keeping the local potters in beans and rice. All right, so now it's nice that this is stiffened up enough. Almost enough. That I can carefully press things onto it. And you can go, as I was starting to say, you can go as delicate with these features as you want, or just as crude in your application and shaping as you desire. They're really, for me, they are a fun piece. Many years ago, I was in the art game in Los Angeles, and you had to have a serious, if you were at a party, you had to have a serious line of BS about what you were doing, and it just never included fun. And I confess I have a bit of a taste for, I think the German word is kitsch. And another roadside attraction kind of gets to the heart of that in some way. So I don't know. I guess these might fit as kitsch. I have a book on it. I could look it up. Check the authorities. What is kitsch? But fun, is a necessary ingredient in life, and it helps make my pottery day go better too. Okay, so there's my kind of roughed out nose. Now, if you are making jugs for use, time for some white clay. If you're making jugs for use, the idea would be that they are as light in weight as possible, as befits their use. You've got a 5-gallon jug. Actually, I meant to bring mine today. I have a nice 5-gallon jug somebody made probably 150 years ago in Illinois. You add 5 gallons of fluid. Well, water is 8 pounds per gallon, right? So there's 40 pounds. And then if you had a 20-pound jug, now you got 60 pounds. So you really do need to be mindful. But the chance that somebody uses this, if at all, or very much, to tote their whatever around in their jug is, I'd say, slim to none. It's a decorative item, a fun decorative. You can stick a flower in it, which might add to the fun. All right, so I'm doing a couple of eyeballs here now using the white clay, so I put them slightly askew, and let's see, there's my slip. I'll put one up there and not too close together. So you just want to get a good pressure there without pushing in your size of your pot too much. I do recall my mother, I guess there was a glass factory. Maybe they blew bottles or anyway, something near where she grew up, Illinois, Indiana. And so she, being the daughter of a craftsman, knew something about the crafts and trades. And I remember her telling me that the men at the glass factory, at the end of the day, using up all the glass in the pot, would make what they called whimsies or fancies. And it was just the glass makers and glass blowers kind of, at the end of the day, oh, let's see what fun thing we can make out of the remaining glass. And I tend to see these Crazy Face Jugs somewhat in that mode or mold. Literally mold, huh? And some teeth. Now, I used to, with high school students, about the time you make something that looks like that, they all start tittering back there. Okay, like, what are you guys laughing about? Oh, nothing. All right. Big wide mouth. Okay, so I'm going to, and I didn't put slip on there, but I think I'll get it joined on there well enough. And kind of push them up, push them down, and grab a tool. Now, if your dentist ever saw you coming in with a mouthful of teeth like I'm making here, he'd probably go out the back door. And, once again, I'm not making models for a dental school, so there's no reason to be particularly precise about these. In fact, the crazier the better, right?
Perfect gift for a dentist.
There you go. Well, we've got one up here. He's a very skilled man, as a matter of fact. I always tell him he's got good hands. When you're a craftsperson working with your hands, I think you do learn to appreciate other people that are good, especially if they're 5 fingers deep into your mouth. Okay, so some lips. Here comes that shape again.
You said that you waited a day to put this on?
Right.
I was in the elementary school and we had a wheel. And because we only get to see them two times,
Right.
there's never enough time to get it all done. So we would have them put their pieces on at the same time. It could be more specific.
Yes, and I've worked in those sort of circumstances before, exactly what you're talking about, and it requires, it's a different kind of dance. That's what it requires, yeah. I remember, and I used to teach adult school. I taught at Cal State Dominguez Hills. I was an adjunct professor in their school of education, and I taught teachers how to teach art to fit the state and local requirements which were all tied at that time to the elements and principles of design and art, which was a program that as I know it, came out of the Getty, their education institute, in the 80s. So anyway, but yeah, I'd be down there one day a week, and I wanted to teach them things that they could teach their students,
Right.
because then they had to go back and do that. But so I would end up, if we did, I remember doing monoprints with them on styrofoam, and it wasn't a dedicated room. It didn't even have a sink in it. Thank you, Cal State. And driving home with all these wet block prints spread around the back of my car, or a bunch of little clay objects that I'm trying not to tip over as I drive back up the freeway to central Los Angeles. So yeah, it'll give you fits. All right, so we got the upper lip and the lower lip, and I'm just not gonna get too crazy with this right now. I will be doing more work to join all this together, but I'm not going to bore you with it now. I'm just going to put on a couple of eyelids and make some holes for the eyes. Let's see, what do I want here? Kind of a little shell-like or leaf-like shape. Oops, come back here. And a lot of tools, a lot of things can be tools in the clay shop, in the schoolroom. If Helen was here, she could, I'm not going to tell the story again, but I did learn, this will become quite apparent. I was teaching in a reform school for 8 years. The first time I taught clay, I had a jar of needle tools, this nice steel tool and an aluminum handle for them to use. It was the end of the period, the bell rang, and these weren't children that ran away from home. We had some serious youthful criminals in there. But anyway, I'm watching them walk out. I say, put your needle tools in that jar. And I think there were none in it after they got out of the room. So I go to the principal's office, and I'm standing in the hallway while all the girls, this was the girls group, they all got strip searched somewhere. They had to tear the mirrors off the walls in the bathroom because they had stuck them back there. And all these other teachers are standing there looking at me going, who hired this? So, you know what became our premier tool for working?
Pencil?
The number 2 school pencil. Sharpened, not too sharp. You can you can cut clay with it, you can poke clay with it. So yeah, no more needle tools. All right, so I'm gonna, I'll see, I think I've used the bigger one. But once again, kind of put the iris pupil here kind of askew, and looking upward a bit. Always good to look upward. And I'll stick in a little ball of the red clay. Yep. I remember running around Cal State Dominguez Hills looking for a water tap outside a building that still had its handle on it, because a lot of them, they just put the handle on to use it, the gardeners, and then took the handle away with them, trying to find one that had a handle on it so I could get a bucket of water for my students to, if we're painting or working with clay or whatever we were doing. Sometimes I'd have 40 students in the classroom. These were all teachers working during the day. This was after No Child Left Behind, everyone, no more emergency certifications. So they were all still working during the day, teaching and getting their certificate. I said, God bless them. They want to stay in education. Good for them. So they were going through that. But all right, so one thing I'll do finally here is pull a couple of handles for the Let's see. Pull a couple of handles for the ears and for handles. This clay is getting a little stiff. See what I can. See what happens if you don't ask me questions. I just keep talking. So.
That's to our benefit.
Well, maybe it depends on what I'm talking about.
Well, it's nice to have that the wheel because you can adjust it to however you want it fast to go.
Right.
And when we had in the school, ours was a low and high, and it was horrible.
Oh, that's one of those old Amico. It's 2 speeds.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. We lost a lot of clay that way.
Yeah. Well, so there's a right.
The first time I learned how to
So that reminds me of another story. What a surprise! My friend John Merkel, actually in the early 70s, late 60s, got a apprenticeship at De Porcelaine Fles in Delft, Holland. Our owner here, Helen, she has a number of pieces from there. She grew up there. Her family was there. But anyway, so his first day on the job, they wanted him to trim dinner plates. So he gets these dinner plates that have been formed, whatever way they were, and so his job was to flip them over. They're stiff enough to be manipulated, but soft enough to be trimmed. And he'd flip them over upside down and put them onto the wheel. Well, they had several wheels. They were all running off the same belt, off the same energy source. They didn't stop. So he's there putting dinner plates on it, and they're just flying off. And he looks up, and all the guys in the pottery are laughing at him, right? So he finally got the knack of it, but
oh my gosh.
yeah. So yeah,
I can understand that.
yeah. Wheels that don't stop in industry are probably more the norm. So then you would want to slam your clay down on there, and you just got one speed. There's one speed. All right, so I'm pulling a couple of handles here. All right, so a little bit thinner would be good. Now, if you watch, there's some videos on YouTube and such. I've watched. I did a demo here, I think last year, of how I make plates using a jigger and jolly setup with a wheel, which is basically you have a spinning mold, and then you have a jigger arm with a template that screeds off the extra clay, and that forms the mold forms the top of the plate, and the jigger arm and the template forms the foot and the bottom of the plate. And you watch these guys, Thailand, Cambodia, somewhere, and they're just whipping those things out all day. I really admire that kind of level of skill, especially in production. I kind of set out to be that myself. How many mug bodies could I make in a day and that kind of stuff. But I don't do that anymore. All right, so somewhere there. And let's see, I put this one a little lower. Okay, I'm going to put him down here just to get my angle. Okay, so on he goes. Hope I got enough clay there. Oh yeah, there we go. Just a modest little finger size opening. And yeah, And, you know, your body itself becomes, in some ways, your gauge for what you're doing, especially the more you do it. For instance, these openings are always just about the size of my finger. And, you know, when you're opening up the clay, how far do you sink the hole? Well, that becomes sort of a muscle memory, like the difference between your fingers on the outside and where your thumb is on the inside. You just, you know, you kind of learn to feel what's going on. Or, you know, how tall is it? Well, how far can you stretch your little finger and the tip of your thumb? All right. Okay, here we go. Well, I did say I was going to work a little more crudely today, so. All right. And once again, all these pieces need to be joined on a little better. And I will do that, but since I've stretched it to about an hour here already, I'm going to put back up my completed one and say